Hi, and welcome to the Five Spheres of Fit. I am Sabrina, the president.
And I am Noel, the founder and creative director.
The Five Spheres is a lifestyle strategy that constantly evolves with you. Your five spheres are the physical, the mental, the financial, the social, and the educational spheres. Noel, we've been talking about this a lot, and I would like to talk to you about applying your five spheres when it seems like the world around you is in constant upheaval and uncertainty. And what I'm specifically talking to is the political climate that we are living in here in the United States. Of course, what happens here in the US can also affect what's happening around the world and actually does. But it can really impact not just your financial sphere, but everything your physical, your mental, your social. We're seeing that in a lot of people. That's what I want to talk about today. So, where do you want to start?
So one of the things I want to start is I like to try to keep this, ever the optimist. I always want to try to keep everything that we talk about with the five series, even some of the subjects that may bring us down a little bit. And this is one that may take us into some spaces where we might be feeling some negativity, uncertainty, anxiety, angst, all the stuff that kind of will bring you down, not only emotionally, but truly like even physically, mentally. So keeping this in a sort of positive light spirit, I want to say this. Yes, we obviously know that we've got so much going on in the United States, politically speaking, and regardless of what side of the aisle you are on, and or if you are not even considered to be politically involved, maybe you're an independent in that way, or you're independent from politics, you just don't want to be a part of it because it's just too much. I want to keep the focus on just kind of understanding your five spheres, regardless of all of this upheaval. And we want to acknowledge that. That's number one. Acknowledge that there's a lot of upheaval, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of angst, a lot of uncertainty.
There's an unknown, yes.
Sure, because a lot of people just aren't certain what's going on. So I think the important thing for all of us out there to do is to be considering how is these events, let's call them events, how are these events, news reports, how are they impacting us? And let's talk about maybe why they're impacting us, if it's a negative thing, and if it's a positive thing, even better. But just to try to understand how we can kind of accept it, deal with it, and then kind of move on from it. Because as we all know, like this news cycle is, every 10 minutes there's breaking news. Every day there's a news story or there's another story coming out that's part of a story that we already know about. We thought we'd close the door on.
And perhaps one doesn't impact us, but the next one might.
Correct. So we want to kind of look at that. Let's start this way, right? So we've got our five spheres, and let's just talk about the physical sphere. Like, how does all of this upheaval impact us physically? And we know that some people are so emotional, Sabrina, about all of the things that are happening politically that they have this real visceral response within, and it literally is making them physically sick. They cannot even function regularly or normally on a daily basis because they're so upset about what they've heard, what they've seen, what maybe their friends are now talking about. And maybe in their circle, whether it's friends, family, circle of trust, whatever you want to call it, maybe there's someone who they never thought was going to be a certain way, and now they're a certain way. And it's literally and truly making them sad, sick, they feel depressed, all of those things. And so just acknowledging that is so, so important. I mean, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So within your physical, you're being impacted. How can you find balance in your physical sphere when you are dealing with all of this?
And this goes right back to all of the tools and resources, whether it's on our website, whether we've talked about it in these podcasts, is going back to the root of putting yourself in the best position you can be in. So like if you start feeling like that physical anxiety and you're doing your breathing work, your breath work, taking the deep breath in through the nose, breathing out diaphragmatically through the mouth with pursed lips, things like that.
Working out,
getting out into maybe what you call a safe space where you go for walks. If you feel, Sabrina, like maybe the people around you just aren't supportive and they're looking at you like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, right? They're not acknowledging your feelings. Go for a walk, do something singularly. You can go shoot some baskets, kick a ball around, walk your dog, play with an animal.
It's amazing how so many physical activity is so beneficial and
Release
instantly beneficial.
Release those endorphins, right?
Yep.
You say it all the time. It's
Yep.
like when you feel down, when you don't feel your best and something's impacting you physically, you go out, you do a workout, you just get away. Going for a drive in the car may not necessarily sound like a physical thing. Getting away from that environment, physically removing yourself from an environment that maybe you're not comfortable with.
This isn't only when you are stressed out with the political climate, but this could be anything, right?
Sure, absolutely. And this all is, it will segue right into like mental sphere, right? So whenever people are physically impaired in some way because of anxiety or angst or what have you, obviously this is direct correlation right into their mental sphere, right? So then how are they thinking about the impacts of that physical uncertainty? Well, then they may start to feel like that increased anxiety mentally. They cannot stop the brain from taking them into that fear, that place of fear. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of let that go and they're trying to figure that out. So you can see where those interplays between the two spheres are happening. And so in these moments, it's really important to really go back to some of the tools and resources that you know are available or maybe that you've learned about or that are on our site or we've talked about a podcast and so on and so forth, and really honor the fact that you're kind of going through this. Acknowledge, like, yeah, you know what, mentally I'm not well. I thought my really close friends were supportive of me and I told them, you know, this is who I am and this political body is adverse to that. It makes me feel like crap. Why won't you acknowledge that? And so these are real things happening. Yeah. So it's so important to kind of go back and review kind of how you mentally disengage in certain instances, but then also how you mentally engage in a safe way so that you feel good about yourself and you can move forward in a positive way, be the best version of yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, I think it was about 12 years ago when you were on social media and it was prior to election time and you were getting pretty stressed out and worked up about how people you knew were affiliating politically and it did not align with you. And also that you did know. Yeah. The people you did know. And you know, it was really affecting you mentally.
I didn't realize at the time that there was this vitriol, this level of dissatisfaction, almost to the level of hate. Maybe it was hate, and it was shocking to me. And I felt away, like physically, I felt overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, you have just literally rocked my world. I thought it was my safe zone and my social.
A lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, the interplay between physical, mental, and social when it comes to politics. But we'll get to social in a minute.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we have all these things that happen in our life, and generally speaking, as adults, that we hope that we have the tools and resources to kind of deal with these things as they come at us, right? That's what makes us adults. What allows us to continue to progress. Political discussions oftentimes result in people coming away and not feeling any better than they were before. In fact, I think in too many instances, let's say too many instances, people are walking away from conversations going, well, that's not my friend. That's not someone I want to be around. That's not someone I align with ideologically. And so I'm done with them. And we have moved so far away from having discourse with one another that it's truly causing us to be physically sick, to be mentally unwell, to socially distance ourselves from these groups that we used to call our friend groups or our support groups or our peer groups, whatever you want to call it. And so it concerns me, and I would want our viewers, our audience to know that, you know, these are all things that, I mean, they've happened before, just maybe it's a little more magnified because we have things like social media and the internet, whereas, you know, 30 years ago we didn't have that, but there was still political, discord. There was folks who didn't believe in this and folks who did believe in that, and they would kind of argue, but it seemed like it was almost more palatable. Now it's like, you know, you're the devil.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. Right? That long ago, you know, our parents' time growing up, when we were kids, you did not talk politics.
No. Well, you were encouraged not to, right?
You were encouraged, yeah.
It just wasn't.
And you didn't do it. Behavior, it wasn't. It was manners. Yes, exactly.
Politics,
now it's thrown at your face.
Oh yeah. And I think people, because a lot of people who engage in social media, you know, you can see someone beforehand. So if like you're meeting people, you're like, oh yeah, you're the one who's the big this supporter. You're the one who's the big that. Or you don't like that, and you immediately are compartmentalizing people before you have a chance to really kind of talk to them. And, I'm the first person to say that, it's important for us to engage. And after the engagement, assuming you gave your all, you truly were present and you asked questions, you really tried to understand the other party. If you come away from that engagement and you're like, you're dissatisfied, or you're like, this is just not the person, that's also okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here to tell you, like, oh, well, just because you have a disagreement doesn't mean you can't be friends. No, if you get to a point and your safe space tells you, this is not good for me.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean,
exactly.
We talk toxic relationships. On that same level, you may find that in your social sphere, if we're moving into that paradigm, that maybe this is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you know better. You're like, no, I'm okay. I have lots of friends over here and over here and over here. I don't need to be dealing with this. And it's okay to kind of let things go or let people go.
You know this, but I had a friend in middle school, through high school. We lost touch, and then we reconnected as adults, our little group, and we would travel together. Every other year, we're traveling the country together. And then 2 elections ago, I noticed we weren't Instagram friends anymore. I was like, oh, that's weird. So I requested her again. I thought it was a little glitch. Yeah. And when I went back to check, she had, declined my friend invitation. Sure. So then I text her, and
which is odd because you're not outspoken per se.
Yeah, well, she said I guess I posted something on my Instagram stories that she was already mentally stressed out with the political climate we were in 8 years ago. And so she just thought it was best, because we were on different sides of the aisle, that she was removing all people that she didn't align with from her life. And, I was like, okay, I get it. Of course, I felt a little bad, but I thought, it makes me think now, because I've removed people from social media. I guess we've jumped into the social sphere and skipped the financial, which will be a big one. So that's okay. I've removed people on social media, but I've also kept some people on social media that have different opinions from me politically. Absolutely. Because I know that they have a good heart. I just feel like, what is it? I have family members, right? But I feel
they can maybe teach you how their thought process.
I don't think so. I don't see it that way.
Okay.
I see it as, maybe I see it as, you just don't get it. Yeah. You just don't get it. And that's, but I know you have a good heart and you love me.
Yeah.
Right? And that if you are a good person. Sure. But I just feel like you don't get what I get.
And I think
does that make sense?
It does. And you're also, and you have to recognize too, and I think on some level you do for sure, that you're a highly educated, you're an attorney, you're highly educated, you spent time in the inner workings of Washington, D.C., you have had access to and an understanding of the nature of national politics in a manner that 99% of the population does not have and never will have. And that reality for you, just automatically puts you at a different level. Now, I know this is another thing that we talk about, and this goes right into our educational sphere, right? So because of your education, because of your standing, your experience, you're not operating necessarily on equal footing when you have conversations about national politics. And that's just the fact of the matter. And so when you get into some of these arguments, I kind of watch you, and you're very good at allowing the other person to just have their say, and you just kind of quietly nod like, okay. And I know that you don't agree with what they're saying, but you have the decorum to allow them to just say it. Even it could be the most ridiculous things, backed by no fact, no empirical data, nothing that you could actually use to support, let's say in a court of law, or just in a high-end conversation where it's all based on facts and all that good stuff. And I commend you for that, because I think you're also tapping into your mental sphere of going, I am fortunate to be highly educated. I'm fortunate to have the experiences that I've had, but that doesn't make me feel like I need to put someone down or obviously just immediately correct them and show them the way, because mentally for you, you may have a relationship with them and you'd rather avoid the conflict that comes with that. Is that fair?
So that is fair. And, it's so easy to hide behind social media if I'm seeing it in that aspect,
And,
right? So another very good friend since high school, right? I mean, very good friend. We have a difference of opinion politically, and this person has been posting a lot on their stories. And I will always fact check. And maybe that's why a lot of times when I'm face to face with someone, sometimes it's not worth the fight. And sometimes I may not know enough because I'm not going to argue opinion. I'm going to argue the facts. And I will fact check her story post. Wrong, wrong, wrong. False, false, false. And I'm tempted to reach out to that person. Do I educate them on what is factual and correct? Is that even my job? You should go and you should be fact checking what you see online, whether it's social media, whether it's Google, anywhere, whether it was sent to you on WhatsApp. You have to fact check. There's so much information out there. We don't know what's true or not.
And that begs a much greater question, which is, are we in this space now because of the lack of intellectual curiosity? Growing up, I can say this. My parents never expected me to go and learn a particular discipline or go and be a doctor or go and do this or go. My dad, oddly enough, kind of saw education as in the sort of classical viewpoint, like go learn everything that you possibly can, and then you'll find your way. And to my point, I think when we talk with people now and we listen and we share stories and all that, I don't see the level of intellectual curiosity that I remember seeing as a child. And it could be, I was very fortunate. My parents had very unique friends and had put us in positions to meet unique people.
Give us an example of a unique friend so that...
political leaders of the time, folks who ran Washington, D.C. in the 70s and 80s.
That's where we're coming from.
High finance in New York, people like that. And I recognize that that's a very different viewpoint that I got. But to my point, and I think this is an open door for anybody. This is not something that absolutely is based on demographics. Your willingness to learn about the world, your curiosity about the world is really something that is within you. Like if you choose to be myopic and I'm not worried about them over here because I just do this, well, the danger in that is kind of what we're seeing today. And if you're not open to, at least at minimum, bare minimum, open to understanding different viewpoints, then where are you going? Because you could not speak intelligently about an issue if you don't know the other side. And we know this from law school. You are required to understand and present information in briefs that the opposing party will discuss and talk about the merits of that. And in life and in discussions, shouldn't we know what the counter arguments are?
Absolutely.
I always feel like,
Absolutely.
And I feel, and I hate saying this, and the reason I hate saying this is because, like you, as an attorney, like sometimes I feel a little handcuffed because if I'm talking to someone who may not have had the privilege of, travel, education, continued learning, growth mindset, all of the things that I espouse, I don't feel it's fair to engage in a conversation with that individual about something that they seemingly feel very emotional about. Because where's that going to go for me? I'm going to look like a jerk. You're Mr. Know-it-all. You're this, that, the other. Could it be my delivery? Sure, I've been guilty of that. Yeah. But I think...
But it's also the facts. That's what we're talking about, the facts. Yeah. There's also individuals...
Everyone has to kind of tippy-toe around, regardless of your
background. We're all walking on eggshells right now, right? Yeah, with each other.
And this goes to this time that we're in. Like, how do we deal with that? And staying in this educational sphere, because it's what we're talking about now, but recognizing what you know and what you have here, balancing that, what you feel here, those are important details because we don't need to be losing friends. We need to be gaining friends. We need to be gaining people who respect us at the very least. And
I love that.
To me, Sabrina, is something that we're missing out. And I would hope that people would take the time to really develop that educational sphere. Go learn something new.
It's also, some people vote just on one or two issues. And you have to be aware of everything else because somehow it will impact your life, your child's life, your spouse's life, your parents' life, your siblings' life. I'm just making an example here. Whether you are pro-choice or pro-life, right? If that's what you're voting on, Are you still aware of the other issues around you that will impact your life?
Sure.
For example, the financial sphere.
Sure.
A lot of people voted in this last election based on the social issues, unaware of financial consequences, right? I'm sure people know exactly where we fall politically.
The one big, beautiful bill, the vast majority, statistically speaking, who voted for that will find that it does not directly improve their financial situation. Now, one could argue a policy that has it's been around since the 80s, the trickle-down policy, which, depending on who you speak to, it could be considered fallacy. If you look at the growth of wealth at the top versus the middle and the bottom, it's so significantly out of whack that I don't even think math could have predicted any of this. And most folks will look at that and say, well, it's okay because this group of people that we don't like over here, we get to keep them out. We get to deny them.
Are you talking about the lower income?
Well, anybody, any group that you don't want to be a part of your vision of it. And to this point, I would say on both sides, not just one side, both sides, there is considerable loss of vision for the collective. And as a result of that, it adds to this upheaval. It adds to this anxiety. If you told someone you were of a political affiliation, they will immediately cast aspersions if they're from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
either side, correct.
And if they have some sense of political decorum, they'll be like, well, you just don't know any better, right? And we're getting to an age, I'm about to be 50, where I feel like I can step into my father's shoes, and at sometimes maybe I will be a little condescending because I'm older and I'm wiser and I've lived a little, and I want to show off a little bit of that knowledge, not for the sake of showing it off, but to let someone know that you're wrong. Right? But that doesn't necessarily get us anywhere. It might be impressive to some, it might be absolutely boring to others. But the reality is, this is kind of where we are. And I'm confused. I'm a little lost at times, trying to figure out, do I say something because I have the obligation as someone who is well-read and intelligent, had the fortune of lots of schooling? Do I do something? I don't know. So, getting through, going back to these 5 spheres, Sabrina, we see all of these impacts occurring, right? We touched on each and every one.
Well, we didn't finish the financial sphere.
Right. Yeah. And we still have to go through social. But in fact, we've touched on each one, and we'll address the last 2 spheres there. But understanding that there's such an interplay between all of these spheres.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your foundations for success in managing this upheaval, all of this anxiety, the uncertainty of now, and what maybe the immediate future and even longer future looks like for you. It's really putting yourself in a position to look into each one of your spheres and see, well, how am I doing? What's going on for me? And then kind of make your decisions as to how you'll move through all of this upheaval based on how it's impacting you in your 5 spheres.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a platform. It's a foundation for you in which to launch through and kind of move through these doors of upheaval, change, and uncertainty. Okay, Sabrina, let's go back and take a look at that financial sphere again.
Yeah. You and I have a tax business, and it really hit me this past tax season. We're in June now, so January through April, when we had clients come in. Some were extremely stressed out, not knowing the future of their finances. We had senior citizens calling and asking, am I going to lose my Social Security benefits? We had clients saying grocery prices are too expensive. Then on the flip side, we had people saying like, well, I hear I'm getting a stimulus check. Do you know when that's coming? A lot of information being thrown.
And disinformation.
And it just gets people like, ooh, am I getting a stimulus check? Can I spend money now? Will I be able to, use it to pay bills? We haven't heard of a stimulus check. So it's just a lot of, things being said.
And being on the forefront of that, Sabrina and I being in the tax business, both actually being at the desk, with our staff and whatnot, we're seeing so many different viewpoints, political viewpoints, demographic, cultural, all of these things kind of coming to a head. So we're trying to make sense of this all at the same time that we're trying to make sense of this for our clients, because we're being paid to do that. We're being paid to give them, and now it felt like, I'll say this, and maybe you'll share the same sentiment. Didn't it feel like we had to offer up some sort of opinion on all of these things.
Yeah,
Like we couldn't just be like,
you don't
oh
want
yeah,
to because you may
that's
not
right,
agree with
eggs are
it.
expensive.
Yeah.
That's not what they want. Tell me, Noel, why are eggs so expensive?
Yeah.
Is this a legitimate thing? The beauty in that, Sabrina, and this is what I really loved about tax season 2025, is that we got to be a voice of reason and calm for a multitude of people. You know, we have 6 offices, 6 different geographic locations in the state of Texas. And that was very empowering. And I know I did more of the traveling, but our beautiful office up in Blanco, we've got lots of different folks who've moved in from lots of different places. So you're dealing with people from not just Texas, from other places, and just being able to talk to them about their financial sphere, about the things that are and we didn't always have the answer. And you tell me what you thought. I didn't always have the answer, but just to have the conversation was calming for them.
Yeah. And, you know, for example, the older gentleman who called and said, you know, I live off my Social Security benefits. You know, is the government taking that away? I don't have the answer for that. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting the same information everyone else is getting, but I could at least calm him down and say, do I believe it's going to go away? No, but I don't know what's happening. And if you want to call me again in another week to ask me, please feel free. And I think that was comforting mentally for a lot of clients. And then there's that client that I told you said, we're getting stimulus checks, right? And she said, well, one of my friends just got hers. And I was like, girl, educational sphere, look it up. No one has gotten stimulus checks again.
And those are difficult moments, I think, for us, because, you know, you go from maybe 10 clients in a row, just sitting there, turning everything over and just listening to you. And then you get one client who's steadfast about, well, you don't know. And it's like, well, tell me what it is that I don't know. Because I usually do that. And I'm not trying to do that in a condescending way, but you're here paying me good money. And part of that is you trust my knowledge, my background, training,
I'm literally handling your taxes right now.
So I think I would have some knowledge.
Right, exactly.
Beyond general knowledge about the subject. And that's to say that we work really, really hard to be in the know. Because there's nothing more, I think, paralyzing as a professional to be in a situation, and let's say we're talking about financial sphere, someone asks you a question germane to their situation and you have no basis of knowledge. Like that's not good.
Yeah.
And so I know we take a lot of pride in that. And I would encourage, people watching this and thinking about 5 spheres in their financial sphere, have some semblance, have some basis of knowledge in everything that you're doing, all 5 spheres of your life. We obviously provide tools and resources for you to review and get to better know yourself through your 5 spheres. But dive a little deeper.
And that comes politically as well, because if you are stressed about your finances, when it comes to the political state of our country, dig into your educational sphere, do the research, and then go back to your financial sphere and see where can I get the tools to help me just in case this happens, just in case this happens, just in case tariffs do affect, my budgeting for the year. These are things you have to be aware of. And of course, the interplay between all 5, if, there is some legislation or bill passed that affects me financially, it is going to affect me mentally and physically.
Sure.
This is why what Noel and I are doing is taking a topic and seeing how you review your 5 spheres, holistic approach to life, within each of those topics.
To deal and digest all of this upheaval, uncertainty.
Right.
There's no, I can't think in my time of a platform that I've ever used that has allowed me to organize all of this stuff and be able to put it in a digestible way for me to just kind of like accept it, or just I've dealt with it, maybe not fully, but I'm able to put it away as the 5 spheres. And I mean that sincerely. And obviously, you might say, well, you're pretty biased, Noel. It's your program, it's your platform.
But there's a reason people tell you, like, how do you do all this? How do you seem like you have it all together?
Right.
Well, because you're constantly reviewing your 5 spheres. If you feel, mentally down, That's where you look at it. Oh my gosh, I have an imbalance in my mental sphere. What is it being caused by? Is it my physical sphere? No, it's right now, it's the state of our country. Okay, so what am I going to do to fix that? Right? I mean, this is what the five spheres is. It's you are constantly reviewing them. I always say this. I review them when I'm going to bed. I'm like thinking physical, mental, social, financial, education. How do I feel in each? We ask our daughter that.
Like a daily checkbox. And you can do with that. I mean, some people do this on a daily basis. Some people want to look at it weekly. Some people are moving more towards like, hey, a monthly check-in or a quarterly check-in or an annual check-in. And all of those are great. You got to start somewhere. The point being is the five spheres is that platform where you can get yourself to a point where you have everything organized so that you can evaluate and then you can problem solve. And that's been at the forefront of what we stand for, is putting people in position to be the best that they can be, the best version of themselves, by utilizing this strategy in which to take life as it's coming at you and just boom, 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 and just kind of deal with it. And that way you feel a little bit more empowered and you feel more confident. And confidence to me that's everything. We were laughing one day, Sabrina, I was talking with a friend, a little off the subject, but we were talking about, how is it that you can just like know these things? And I was like, well, sometimes I don't. But if I say something and I just say it with a level of confidence, I got like 9 out of 10 times we're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I say, oh, the Eiffel Tower.
That's what we tell Naima.
The Eiffel Tower, that's in London, right? That absolutely is in London. So in fact, it's down by, and people will, and they'll, if they don't know.
But that's what's happening here in this country politically too.
That was my point.
Yes.
That was my point. If you don't know any better, you are more likely to fall in line with someone who is out there, snake oil salesman, call it what you want, and believe it because you don't know. And when you don't know something, you're looking to someone that you can trust. And now this happens in all political parties. It happens in all different facets of life, where you just start following people, but maybe you don't know, but maybe they look like you, or they sound like you, or they talk like you, or whatever the things that you find most secure for you. The sad part of that is that shouldn't be that test. It should be because you have some semblance of knowledge. Right. So
I am glad we're talking about this, because I would be shocked if we found one person that said, no, what's happening politically in this country does not affect me.
I'm good. I am totally fine.
It does not affect me. The signs, the banners, social media, the constant on TV. I mean, there's still ads, and we're not even, at the 2-year mark for another campaign, that it's like we're still seeing ads.
We're like 6 months into it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what I say is this. You're 100% right. There are plenty of people, however, who are dealing with this in a really positive way. Like, they are not allowing this to evoke a visceral response. They're able to digest the news or not even watch it. And I've gotten to a point where I don't really watch the news all that much. I don't think there's a lot of good quality information there that helps me in my life. In fact, I'd rather, go read some books or periodicals, because to me, there's substantive information there that helps me be a better person.
Avoid the news. That helps people mentally.
But there are people who just turn a blind eye, or bury their head in the sand, if you want to say that. I think that's a little more of a negative connotation. I think some people just don't want to lean into this. They want to just remove themselves from that, and they continue to function in a very positive way. I think those people should be heard from as well. Like, hey, how are you dealing with this? I really commend you for not being so upset. I mean, it looks like this would affect you specifically, but no, you're not affected. And there's something to be said for that too. So we have the five spheres. We push the five spheres because it makes a whole lot of sense in utilizing it to deal with all of this uncertainty. But if you're not utilizing that, what are you doing and how are you using it? And if you are, that's more power to you, because this is not easy.
It's not easy at all. And
this is not easy.
We'll see. I mean, maybe we'll approach this subject again at the end of the year. We'll see how things go. Maybe we could get to midterm elections. That would be wonderful. But thank you, everyone. We hope you gained a little bit of knowledge or insight on this strategy and how it can help, not only when it comes to politics in this country, but with anything you're dealing with. So we hope to hear from you if you have any questions or comments at all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.